Chico Rocks has been, throughout all that time, one of the best reefs in the Keys. And by that I mean lots of coral cover, tons of fish, really a beautiful place. This summer, what we saw when we jumped in the water at Chico was that every single coral there was either bleached or severely pale. It was a sea of white. It was so bad that we could see it from the boat, just on the surface. And so jumping in the water, it was absolutely shocking. It's just like a different reef. We saw soft corals. These are the sea fans and the sea whips. These things that are kind of slowly moving in the water movement. They had not just died, but just they had died to such a degree that the flesh, the tissue was just falling off of them. They were literally dissolving and falling apart before our eyes.
Historically, and this is 50 to 60 years ago, more than 50% of the bottom on a coral reef, on an average coral reef, was occupied by stony corals. That declined to about 20% by the 80s and 90s. And so when I entered this field, the average coral reef had only 20% coral cover. So we had lost 30% in the prior 3 or 4 decades. In the last 2 decades, we've lost an additional 15-20%. So we're now looking at an average reef having less than 5% of the bottom occupied by living coral. And that is not sustainable. Coral reefs cannot grow when only 5% of the bottom is occupied by stony corals.
So it's really important to understand that bleaching is not death. Bleaching often leads to death, but there is still the possibility that a coral can recover. Now we've seen over those 10 odd years, bleaching events happen in the Keys before. Unfortunately, it's become more frequently than I would like. But I have never seen anything as bad as what we saw this summer.
A heat wave off the coast of Florida is sending water temperatures to unprecedented highs.
Scientists are urgently trying to move samples of Florida's coral reefs into tanks on land before they die amid record-breaking ocean heat waves. Last month, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration recorded a reading of 101 degrees Fahrenheit off the coast of the Florida Keys.
We had to transfer or remove some of our coral from our offshore nurseries into land-based systems where we can control temperature and give a chance to these corals during these difficult conditions. We were expecting that a new massive bleaching event was coming when we realized that the El Niño this year was going to be quite strong. But the severity and the speed of onset definitely demanded a different approach. One of those was to remove the corals out of the water to give them a chance to survive, and particularly to protect and safeguard the genetic diversity that we have on our nurseries. We see some coral that do really well on the offshore nurseries. We outplant them and they don't do that well on the reef. We saw the same here. Some corals that were doing really bad in the offshore nursery during the bleaching event, we brought them here and they did better. So that just tells us that there is no such thing as a super coral. We just need to continue propagating that genetically diverse pool. The other ones that are late in getting ready, they start continue bringing the corals. But those that first touch sand, they're the ones who will be organizing by species. So today we were able to return 1,500 corals that were rescued 3 months ago from the bleaching event, and now they are back at the Tavernier nursery in the natural environment, and we hope that they can continue to grow and be ready to be fragged out, and some of them are planted back to the reef. Between June before the bleaching event and October, just as the bleaching event was ending, and that loss is coming down to about 50 to 55% of the corals that we had across our 4 nurseries along the Florida Keys.
When you ask where do we go from here, that is a question that I ask myself absolutely every day. And it is the single thing that drives my research forward right now. Because what we've seen this summer has been so bad that it changes how we look at what we're doing, and it makes us reevaluate, the methods that we've been using. So my lab is focused on a couple different avenues of research that we think could be helpful for restoration in general. We're working at stress hardening. This is the concept that if we expose corals to certain conditions, it might toughen them up. This is, analogous to if you go to a gym every day, you become stronger, right? So every day we hit corals in our laboratory, in this lab that you see around you, with high temperatures for a very brief amount of time and then take them back down to normal. And it toughens them up. We've seen that they've been able to persist longer under heat stress. That's amazing. It's not a silver bullet by any stretch of the imagination, but it may be a methodology that we could use to prepare these corals for what we know they are going to be experiencing in the field. We're also really interested in how we can increase coral growth rates, production rates, so that we can scale up restoration. Right now, people are growing corals, and many other people are growing corals on the scales of thousands. But the reef tract, the Florida reef tract, is a couple hundred miles. That's huge. That's a ton of corals. And we need to be really producing corals at the rate of factory farms. Right now, we're in here scrubbing these corals with toothbrushes. We need automation. We need robotics. We need all of these different technologies to really maximize our ability to conduct this restoration. I would like to say that I'm not willing to accept the possibility of it not working because we have too much to lose. Coral reefs are too important.